Personality matters way less than your social rank. I've got so many examples that I can illustrate and prove this point. You see, when I was younger, particularly when I was a small child, I've always been a naturally funny kind of quirky character, but I would often notice that, certain people liked more than others. Kind of obvious. I've always sort of been observant to the world around me. And I've noticed that certain people people gravitated towards them more than others. And when I was a kid, I was quite funny and I'd be silly and I don't know, had a good time, and people tend to gravitate towards that. So I sort of, as a result of that, formed this belief that, if you have a good personality, people will like you. And it sort of, at the surface level, makes sense. When you're not aware of how ridiculous human society is, you sort of think, oh, that makes sense. If someone's, and from my perspective, I always liked people with, I don't know, fun personalities. So to me, it made sense. I always liked people that way and they liked me that way. But as I got older, and to be honest, it only, maybe it took me a long time in life to figure this out, but it's actually your social value that really is what people care about the most. Most of the time anyway. This might sound ridiculous, but when you've been in situations where people treat you completely differently based on what they think you are, versus what you actually are, and when you see people who are in certain backgrounds get treated a certain way, you start to realize that social value really is what dictates sort of how people interact with you. Because the personality is a very complicated thing. It's kind of hard to really debate what a personality even is, because whilst we probably do have some level of core personality, a lot of it is influenced by outside opinions and outside influences, outside the way we're treated. If you're treated very aggressively, growing up, you're going to develop this kind of don't mess with me. It's hard to explain this, but personality is a very subjective thing. But forget that. What people really care about is your social rank. That's how it works. And social rank is it can depend on the circumstance you're in. But there's a lot of things in society that signal, value. You can, looks. For a man, if you know a lot of women, men will think, oh, he's someone to know, for example. People, what they can get out of you, or just your rank in society. If you have a lot of money, if you're successful in business, or you're famous, or you've got something going for you, people generally will treat you better. I have a really sort of random example with me. When I was at university, around the time I was doing my startup, we used to actually advertise quite a lot. Like we had these Facebook ads and we'd advertise our website. And it was actually a pretty good website, to be honest. So we advertised this thing, and I was quite sort of like well known around the university as like the guy who does this really cool thing. And we went to this place, sort of like a place we used to hang out after university. And it was like a bar that had like a party there. And there was some tables outside and I used to sit there. And I was sitting at this, one day I was walking there, and there was about like a table with some people I knew, and then about 5 random women that I'd never met before. It was like 3 guys and then like 5 random women that I'd never met before. And, knowing these 3 guys, I went and sat down with them. Now, the thing about me as a person is, I'm a flawed person. Some people may hate me or like me or whatever, but objectively, people have always told me I'm very, very good at interacting with strangers. It's one of my biggest strengths. I'm very comfortable talking to new people. I've always felt very happy doing it, but that's just how I am. So when I meet new people, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, hello. And I do my normal thing, and most of the time people like it. But the thing is, at this table, I sat down, and I did my usual thing. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Well, my little thing and this and that. And these 5 women were just completely like, you could tell, like, who is this person, like, sitting down? It was just completely standoffish. And I was like, whatever. They're probably not nicest people anyway. Whatever. I wasn't even interested necessarily in them or anything. I don't even really remember much about them. I just remember I was sitting down really just because my friends were there. And, anyway, so 10 minutes goes by, and I'm sort of talking to my male friends here, and I'm kind of ignoring these 5 women. And then I think it was a female friend actually came around to our table, and she went, oh, look who's here. And she points at me and she goes, oh, he's the guy that's have you seen the latest thing? And he's the guy that, has that website everyone's talking about. And, he's friends with this person and this and that. And they start going on, oh yeah, everyone knows this guy because of this. And because this was around the same time I had just done those like law parties I was talking about in my other video. So I sort of like had a bit of a reputation around on campus. And as soon as this woman said that, those 5 women I just talked about, they completely changed. They're like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's really amazing. Oh, tell me. They're sucking up to me completely. And I was so like, I found it so depressing. Like it actually just like really, at the time I remember thinking, this is so messed up, like for 10 minutes. So my personality had not changed in that 10 minutes. It was only a 10-minute window. So I had been exactly the same person. But, now when I'm talking about my website and all the things I was doing, it was like, oh, that's so cool, and like, oh, that's amazing, or you're so funny, and it just, my personality was the same. My social value had just skyrocketed based on the fact that, these women thought I was, a certain way. And it's a really obvious example of how your personality really just matters a lot less than you think. I'm not saying that personality doesn't matter. That's not what I'm saying. Although I will admit sometimes your personality can work for or against you depending on your situation. Like, being very loud and funny is great when you have money and high value. When you're sort of lower value, people sometimes find it annoying. But I still overall recommend, if you have a good personality, that's a good thing, and you should be yourself and enjoy it. And, don't try and change too much if you don't have to. But what I'm trying to say is, it's good to have a personality that, is great and all, but it's not. It took me so long in life to realize this. It really is your social value, especially as you get older, like what people care about. And obviously I've had the reverse happen to me as well. There was this guy that I used to know. He was an investment banker, and he wasn't necessarily mean to me, but before, I think he was trying to use me to get to this rich guy I was talking about, but he used to hang out with me, and he was all like sucking up to me. He's, oh, tell me about this and that. He was trying to learn everything, and he really seemed to like me. And then after our startup failed, he sort of changed his, he wasn't actually mean to me, but he sort of went like, oh, I wouldn't go to business advice from you. And he was sort of like, he actually wasn't particularly that bad to me, to be honest. And he did leave it on a positive note, like, look, I wish you the best. And it was just, he completely changed his tone around me once my startup failed. So he was sucking up to me like crazy. Because you gotta remember, like, my startup was funded by this rich family, like the people I was talking about in my other video. It was like I was doing it with my friend and his father was involved. That's kind of like the whole story. So this investment banking guy was like really sucking up to me and like, oh, like you're so clever and this and that. The moment my startup failed, my personality did not change at all. I was the same guy. Me and that investment banking guy, we used to make a lot of like really funny jokes about, like, we had all these really funny jokes we used to make together, and really like silly, like, very like, I don't know, individual jokes we used to make. And I was still making those jokes to him, but he didn't care anymore. He didn't find it funny when I was making them anymore. And so like, this is just like, I've just given you two really sort of straightforward examples of how your social value really dictates a lot of the time how people treat you. Unfortunately, I really wish this wasn't the case. I wish so badly it was. That's what in my video about when you're talking about when you were kids, we thought adults would be so great. I talked about this. I was like, look, when you're a kid, you just think, oh, if we're friends, we're friends. No, that's not how the world works, apparently. Oh, it's so depressing. You could really get along with someone. Like, I got along really well with this guy. We used to joke all the time. So I had a laugh. It was crazy. And then the moment my start failed, he sort of, and I wasn't successful, he sort of like changed his opinions of me. And it was like overnight, it was like my social value just dropped. And it was like that with the law events as well. Like, after that had finished and the startup had failed, it was kind of like people sort of went, oh, okay, you're not like useful to me. And I sort of saw how, even though I was the same guy doing the same personality, I was no longer, how do I say? I was no longer treated the same. And I've had many, many examples of this, but I don't want to make this particular video too long because I want to illustrate this point quite succinctly. And I guess this is another thing that people discover when they retire. They might have some really high-flying job or whatever, and then when they retire, they find, oh, actually, hang on, people don't really like treat me the same. So I'm not the only one that experiences this, and people that come into a lot of money or lose a lot of money, they notice this as well. And I've had many conversations about this. Certain women feel like they, are treated a certain way based on how they look. And I've had many, many conversations with many people from all walks of life about this topic. And your social status is definitely like, you'll meet someone and, everyone likes them. Then someone will say, oh, actually, he, I don't know, is a loser or something. People will just sort of then suddenly not like them anymore, if that makes sense. So I've sort of come to the conclusion based on my life and my experiences of, like, when I've gone to environments where I'm lower down, like my value isn't as high, people suddenly go, oh, like they sort of almost get annoyed sometimes by the way I speak. But then in those high environments where I had high value, whatever I said was amazing. And, obviously watching my really rich friend go through life and the way people treated him, once they found out who he was, that was the whole thing. Once they find out who he is, oh, everyone changed. And so I formed this really strong opinion, and I think I'd love to hear from anyone in this, because I actually love hearing the comments, to be honest. I learn so much, and I love engaging here. But I really think your social value, it just dictates so much of the way people treat you. And then as a result of that, your confidence might improve or decline. So my advice to anyone is, like, basically just try and be yourself if you can, because people are going to just like not like you for some random thing like your social value or whatever. So try and at least, just be like, rather than, for me, I used to get really hung up on this. I still do to a degree. But I just sort of think, okay, I'm just going to be funny. And if people think I'm like low value, then I can't change that. You know what I mean? Not that I have all the answers, but that's kind of just me sharing my thoughts for today. So Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.